今天的会议其实是 bilingual 啊，就是 we say the whole session is going to be in English, but I think during Q&A session, if people want to raise questions in Chinese, we do have translators to help with the translation. So feel free to ask questions in Chinese. It is our great honor to really have the two eminent thinkers with us today at the occasion of publication of the Chinese version of the dialogues. There were about 10 letters that exchanged between these two eminent thinkers. And then the title of the book is called The Shadow of Monotheism. I would say the topics that were raised in this book are both timely and eternal. Timely in the sense that we all know, if you read the news lately, you know, that the rhetoric of culture and civilizational clashes have been applied to address the rise of China nowadays. And then so it is really important that we actually sit down and talk about it. What are the underlying culture and civilizational differences? What are the key concepts that actually shape and inform such differences? And then the other aspect is the humanity right now faces an increasing number of common challenges, including frontier technologies, its impact on humanity. And then as Professor Zhao mentioned in a number of occasions, the kinds of challenges we face is not just the sort of superficial common challenges that we talk about in everyday life. It is an existential kind of a risk. And then so at times like this, what kind of culture, values, or belief systems we should use to address these common challenges of humanity. And then so we need to go back to the basics. So such discussion is hugely timely. It's eternal. It's eternal. I mean, topics raised are actually eternal. Why? In the sense that all the questions that are addressed in this book, we talk about we go back to the basic belief systems, we go back to the metaphysical pursuit of what is truth and what is humanity, and then what is the human relationship amongst each other and with nature and with transcendental beings. Those are the questions were raised thousands of years ago. But in the past several hundred years, it has been somewhat neglected, or maybe it has been swept under the carpet, during the tidal waves of globalization. So I think, again, this is the sort of the juncture of humanity. This is exactly the time that we should ask those questions and have this kind of dialogue. What I really like about the dialogues is that it's free of ideological constraints, and then it's full of a mutual respect for each other, both as individuals and also the cultural heritage you each represent. And then there are no instrumental exchanges to be made here. It's not like you want to share something in exchange for something instrumental. So I really welcome this kind of dialogue, and then I'm sure all of us will expect that as well. So without further ado, I'll give the floor to the two eminent thinkers. Thank you. One more announcement. We have actually 5 copies of books to be given out to the audience. So if you are one of the first to raise questions, and then you're likely to get a free copy, okay? Signed copy, right? I imagine? Yeah? Great. Okay, great. Let's begin. Thank you.
Many thanks to Madame Song Bin, the director of Berggruen at Beijing. She arranged this opportunity for us to talk as an older friend, as we are. I would like to give an introduction to our dear friend, Mr. Alain Le Pichon. He is the chairman of the European Transcultural Institute, and he has had started the transcultural adventure about 30 years ago, I think, maybe more, maybe 40 years. I met him in the late 90s of last century, introduced by Professor Wang Mingming, the best anthropologist in China. And I was so impressed by the concept of reciprocal anthropology coined by Alain, and I was convinced of Alain, a so different mind and extraordinary person as Wang Mingming introduced him to me. Then we have a lot of talks about everything, about philosophy, about anthropology, and anything. Then we become friends, and finally we have this co-written book. I have some notes here. Okay. We are supposed, as Chinese, supposed to know quite a lot about the Western culture, but it is not so true. When we know more of the Western culture, actually, we could find we know less than we expected. So I think that this reciprocal anthropology is an excellent idea for the cultures to know each other better and in depth. I think this the very point of the reciprocal anthropology is to to let the observer to be observed. That means both sides are observed and questioned and rediscovered. Therefore, the epistemological authority disappears. As Alain says, epoche of subjectivity, right? So we are thrown into the original or naive situation of mind before being led by knowledge, either to truth or falsehood. So we become beginners, lost in strange recognition. And it is an opportunity for us to travel back to the origin of things, as Heidegger suggests, or to the your experience, as Alain recommends. It's a very Goethe's concept, yeah. And we will be shocked by our lack of knowledge and stammering, as Deleuze says of a good writer. Deleuze says, if you are a good writer, you will stammer in your language. Otherwise, you are copying others. You are talking nonsense. Is that right? So I think I would like to have Alain Le Pichon to explain his wonderful key concept.
So, thank you, Zhao. Thank you. First, I want to thank Mrs. Madame Song, for her welcome. It's fantastic, and give us this chance, this unique chance. I'm really so thankful. I think it's rare to have such opportunities, and I appreciate it, and I appreciate your welcome and your whole team, and Shelley, who was so nice. So I feel well, and I want also to. I'm not speaking of my friend Zhao. He said exactly what is our friendship, but I want to thank and to say how happy I am to see here my great friend, not second friend, same friend, Wang Mingming, a great anthropologist who I'm sure practices genuinely reciprocal anthropology. I admire his work, and I am really very happy that, and I'm thankful that he agrees to critique us. Well, thank you, Wang Mingming. Now, Zhao, I totally agree with what you said, and I will not return to it or form this principle of reciprocal anthropology. But before our discussion today, I would like to let you know how I was a little surprised about this beautiful title, which I was not at all expecting, of The Shadow of Monotheism. It's beautiful. And I thank the publisher who agreed to give this beautiful name. But I am a little surprised, as you said. I didn't expect it. I expected something, as we discussed, like one god or all the gods, or something like that. And now there's this poetic title. But this poetic title can be understood in an ambiguous way. And I can tell you that in France, because our book will be published in October in France, and there are already some readers who are interested in the book. But when I communicated, I told them the title in China is Shadow of Monotheism, they were surprised too. And they said, this is ambiguous. And this, because shadow can be, even if it's very poetic, as you said, and I know very little about China, but in the Chinese culture, clouds and shade is beautiful. But it can be understood in another sense, which is the shadow, which is the thing that remains, but not the real thing. So shadow, it could be understood that the title means that there is no more. It's a past thing, monotheism. No more God. Or, even worse, on my point of view, it could be understood as what has been left of the past. And not only that, but perhaps something, and here I refer to our discussion, and I totally, in the book we discussed it so much, I do agree with you about the use which is done of this model of monotheism. But I think monotheism, or rather God, the unique God, is not that. And I think shadow of monotheism could be understood, as I said, as something which is left from the past and no more existing past, or something even who could be, in this point of view, the second aspect, menacing. Shadow can be understood as something menacing. But I already asked you this question, and you told me, no, this is just because it's poetic. And I do agree. And I accept it. But I accept it in the sense, if you allow me, to refer to what is in the book, what I wrote, which is this idea I mentioned in the beginning of the given from the great poet, philosopher and mystic, Iranian mystic, Sohrawardi, from who is one of the most brilliant writers in Iran, who had this concept, which is an image, but also a concept, of the shadow of the wing of Gabriel. Gabriel is the archangel. Gabriel is one of the angels around God. And so Howard said that there is, in the cosmos, there is this shadow, and this shadow is something real, something which is crossing the whole cosmos, the whole world, the universal. And when you enter in this shadow, you feel the nostalgia of God. And we discussed that in our book as, for me, something which is essential. For me, the presence of God is through the nostalgia of God. So this nostalgia is the feeling of the absence. But the feeling of the absence is also the proof of the presence. And in this sense, I do agree with the title.
I should say, shadow is a poetic saying of influence in China. So the title means the influence, if not impact, of monotheism. It could be influence, it could be impact, something like that. Do you think the French publisher will keep this title?
It could be, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I will continue to discuss the reciprocal anthropology or the transculture. I think that the key point is the original situation of civilization, or your experience as you are talking about, is not a story at all, or not a theoretical fiction. It is a real thing. It had been a reality of the early days of civilization. I refer to the beginning of civilizations. Every civilization was naturally born to be transcultural, I think, as the evidence shows, having the open access to all technologies and the knowledge of each other, learning and learned each other. For example, from the Neolithic age, the New Stone Age, to the pre-Qing period in China. China has learned so many things from the Middle East, mainly from Iraq, the wheat, horses, the ships, even the bronze ware, and so on, many things. But I'm not sure what the Europe has learned from the Middle East. Now transculture has become a problem today due to what I called the cultural border. What I mean is, in the very beginning of the civilization, there were no cultural border, but later people has built the cultural border by ideologies, politics, and religions, especially monotheism, or the methodological monotheism, which is essentially rejecting transculture because he is in defense of the only God or the only authority in knowledge. So my question is, how could you be a religious Christian and transcultural at the same time?
It's okay. Yes, very aggressive question. Well, I hope I am. I'm not sure, of course. I'm sure, and I should say that I'm not so sure of what you said first, which is that the Ur civilizations had this very open way of. I'm not so sure. So I'm not sure I am, and I'm not sure even if it's possible. This is a great question. But nevertheless, I believe. And I think now, related to the second point, I mean, the fact that monotheism as a way of thinking is definitely something, is this border and constructing borders and refusing in the fact and or even yes, chasing the possibility of mutual understanding. This makes me come to the point of what is monotheism, which is the topic of the book. But I believe that monotheism, and I think you agreed, we discussed this in the book, monotheism has two aspects. One is this way of thinking that you describe, and using the only God to chase and to forbid any other thinking. And this, which is clearly proved by history, but proved by what? Proved by precisely historical facts. And I think we perhaps open a parenthesis and think of the concept of monotheism, which is quite recent, which appears in the 19th century. Before that, we were not talking of monotheism. And this concept appeared at the same time as the Western world, but I should speak for Europe, began to contradictory refuse and let his faith in God. So it has been used as a weapon. But in the beginning, and of course before history made the use of it. What history? The history of the Western empires. The moment when Roman Empire was confused with the Christianity, with Constantine. As a fact, this empire, Roman Empire, used it through the Pope, during the whole history, to conquer the world. But this is not at the very beginning. When you read the Gospel, when you read it, it's not at all that. So what you are mentioning, this monotheism as a way of thinking, as a concept which appeared in the 19th century, and with, at the same time as progressively European, after the Lumière, the Enlightenment, the Europe began to withdraw from this faith. On this point of view, I do join you, I agree with you. This is why I was afraid about the possible understanding of the title, you see. But I think we have to make the distinction. And I should finish my answer in quoting something I think very important for our debate, which is precisely what Jan Assmann, who is most interested in transcultural and was ready to join us. Jan Assmann, you know, is this great historian, epistemologist, and historian, and Egyptologist, who made this concept of the mosaic distinction. Mosaic distinction, where he sees the very principle of this theory of monotheism. The moment when in the law, Moses made this distinction as a law. You have not to worship any other god than the unique God. Before that, even if you believe in one God, it doesn't mean that you chase or you forbid any other. This is your point. And I should say this is my point too. I mean, I think even I should have many comments to do to why this happened in this way with Moses. But nevertheless, the very principle of worshipping God, of the faith in God, is not depending on this mosaic distinction. So, this is, I will stop now to ask your reaction, but I believe that we are facing the historical process. And I think all the challenge of this debate, which is just a small thing in the vast debate you presented very, very well. This debate is not finished at all, of course. And the history is not finished. And I believe in the history we have to consider all those moments. And I should like to do it in taking in consideration what I call the prophetic function, which is working all over the world in all the civilizations. But I repeat, we are at a moment. And on the Christian point of view, we are at one moment of this great process.
Are you saying you was a believer of someone before Moses? That means open to all possibilities of gods?
In a way, yes. Perhaps it's not clear in the book. In the historical process, yes. All those questions are difficult questions, and mainly I should say that they are questions we have not yet the answer. Well, but I should refer to. I think this discussion should be placed under the three figures on the Christian point of view. One is Nietzsche. Why Nietzsche? Because Nietzsche is the one who, the more dramatically, eloquently, banished God and proclaimed the death of God. Precisely at the moment, which is of course logical, that this moment of the 19th century when appeared this concept of monotheism. But I should say that Nietzsche used, in fact, applied the principle of mosaic distinction, but displaced it from God to man, and said the only God is man. So, and I think this fits with your great critique of this monotheistic thought and this principle of man as an individual and critical of individualism and human rights and so on. So this is for Nietzsche. But returning to the two other figures, one is Akhenaten. Akhenaten is the Egyptian, the pharaoh, who, according to Freud himself and to Assmann approving Freud, who said that, who invented monotheism in the way with this mosaic distinction. So, this is why I'm mentioning the three figures of Nietzsche, Akhenaten and Moses, with Akhenaten. And the third, but Akhenaten is most interesting because why? Akhenaten is not a Jew. Akhenaten is not of the Jewish civilization. He's not even of the Semitic civilization. He's an African. He's a pharaoh. So it's a world process. And the third, returning back in history, is this great figure, mysterious figure of Melchizedek. You know, Melchizedek is this king of peace who was not a Jew himself and who gave to, how do you say, Béni in French, who approved, who gave his benediction to Abraham. Christian St. Paul's believed that Melchizedek was in fact the figure of Christ. But what is interesting here, what I want to stress, is Akhenaten that Melchizedek as Akhenaten, both of them are not Jews. Both of them, one is African, the other is you know what. I do not pretend at all he was a Chinese. But why not? Why not? I mean, this is, no, he is a mysterious king who is not a Jew, who is not, who comes from, and who shares, who launched, in fact, this historical process of the belief in God. Now the process is not finished. And I think there are historical logics, if I should say, I could say, that in this process there was a moment which was the mosaic distinction. But as a believer, as a Christian, I think that the future and the end of the process is not yet, will be universal. And I even should say that the recent evolution of church, of the Christianity, is rather in this sense, and the sense of all the gods.
Let me explain why we come to the topics of monotheism. Since transculture tries to overcome the cultural border, so we have to detect or to discover what is the border of a culture. So I think monotheism is a typical border to protect, to defend the European culture. Actually, we in the past 20 years, we have quite a lot occasions coming to this topic of religion, not only monotheism. Actually, I tell you a joke. In the 20 years ago, I think, about in a very cold winter in the summer palace, the very cold air and very few visitors, Alain and I were walking along the lake, and suddenly he raised a question to me. What is your opinion about Pope? What language the Pope should speak to make his apology to the Jews? I said, I said it's a very interesting question, but may I know who is Pope? And Alain explained he's the chief of the church. It's Paul the second. So I came to know he is 保罗二世. And I think it's a very interesting question. Alain said the Pope tried to make his apology to the Jews in Israel. He could choose Polish because he is a Polish. He could choose Hebrew, but perhaps he couldn't. And he could choose Latin, since it is the formal and the language for Vatican. But finally, he chose English. It is rather snobbish. So that means his apology, it is a political event rather than a religious event. It's quite interesting. And actually, Alain told me many interesting things about religion. One, I like it so much, is, upon once a time, it is said the Pope, I don't know which Pope, a Pope trying to stop the mafia's illegal taxing on the citizens in the city in South Italy, and the mafia was facing a paradox. They think if they don't murder the Pope, they will lose money. But it is a great shame for them to murder the Pope because they are so religious. So they don't know what to do. I think the religion is a reflection of all problems in life. So that is why we choose this topic. And actually, I have a great experience with church. I'm not always so critical to the religion. Actually, I think it's, I don't know which year, many years ago, Alain brought me to a very old church in Paris, next to the Seine River. It's a kind of Greek church, and I have heard one of the most beautiful songs in the church.
Yeah.
I think Alain has there's a song here.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you, because if you agree, we could hear 1 minute or 2 minutes this beautiful song, which is, I should say for me, it's the expression of this nostalgia of God, what I was mentioning at the beginning. This shade of the shadow of the angel, where you feel, here you can hear. And this man you will hear, was singing, he's 95. And this registration has been done 2 years ago. He was 93. We could hear it more, but I think it's just for giving you yeah. So this is very interesting, because Zhao told me that he was most impressed by that. And in fact, I was very happy that you kindly agreed to enter the church. And this church is an interesting place, because it's the church of the Greek Arab Orthodox in Paris, but related to Catholic and with the Pope. So what you have heard, sung by this man, I repeat, 25 years ago, with a fantastic voice. And people say that, and he says that it's because of God, because of his faith that he is able. And when you come to Paris, you can come. He will be 96 very quickly. But you can hear him every Sunday. What he's singing is the great ritual tradition of the Byzantine ritual. That means it's received from Byzance. Constantinople founded this city built by Constantine, and to the origin of the real origin of Christianity, but implanted in Syria countries, and what he was singing, he was singing first in Greek and then in Arab. In fact, Arab is it's very close, the Syriac dialect is very close to the dialect that the Christ himself was speaking. So it's genuine. It's from the. It's a great testimony, I think. But you told me that you were impressed. In my mind, this is exactly what I mentioned as nostalgia of God. But you before that you mentioned this use of monotheism as a border. And you mentioned the story of the Pope. In fact, to say a little more about that, the Pope was in Israel, and he, after apologizing for the crimes of with the Jews, he wanted to make this message to God. And he put a paper, as the Jews do, in the wall of lamentations. He put the paper, and he wrote the paper, so this paper is addressed to God. He wrote it in English. So this is why I was asking you what. But the choice of course, he has to choose a language, any language. I think I have a different position, a strategical position, as you seem to have. Because you consider monotheism as a border and the shade, or I should say the shade of a border in the present days. I believe that monotheism enters in this process of history, which is a universal process, and rather to be compared and related to what you call Tianxia. I think there is a process in the world which is a unifying process. And I think your theory of Tianxia, also warmingly historically stressed many times in our discussions, this is with this view of the future. With this view of Tianxia, if we use your Chinese model of the globalization, that we have to deal with this view of globalization, which is Christian, universal kingdom.
Yeah, I agree. Every civilization has its version of, in terms of universalism. There are some similarities, certainly, yes. But Alain, do you think, the point is, do you think could the Christianity defend its, the unique God, the concept of unique God? I don't think it's so easy. Of course, I think that we have discussed the Pascal's wager in our book. It's a very interesting argument. Pascal invented the first logical argument for the God in game theory. He argues if you believe God, and God could be either exist or not, and if exist, you will be rewarded. Yeah, but if you don't believe God, if God exists, you will be punished. So that the best choice, strategically speaking, is to believe God. But the problem is, I have developed an extension of the Pascal's wager in the book. My point is, since we suppose a God could punish you, so we must be afraid of every God, not only that God. So if we know there are so many gods, we have to pay our respect to every god. So the logical conclusion is we have to respect all gods in every culture. That means something beyond monotheism. What is your defense of the unique God?
Well, first I should say that I'm not personally impressed. I'm not so much interested in Pascal game theory. This is, I shouldn't, even if I enter in this game theory, I'm not interested because what I'm interested in is...
Because it is not religious, it's economical.
Yes, in a way. It's economical. It's what I'm interested is something very, which is extremely different from that, which is this nostalgia of God, which is the proof for me, the proof of God. And so God is not someone who punishes for me, who punishes. Of course, you have to be a good citizen. But I'm not interested in this sort of credit card, to use your expression. And you know, this is a real topic because the credit card means punishment. But so I understand we need a rule. We need a rule to be applied. But so, this is not the point for me. Second, to answer you, as I told you before, I believe that all that is an historical process. We are, all of us, taken in this process. And the moment of the mosaic distinction, either that the moment of Nietzsche's distinction is included in the whole process, and what we are facing is, I should say, perhaps enter this point, we are facing the question of an alliance. A new alliance. Anthropologically, this perhaps I should try and develop it on Monday. I think those questions of Tianxia, or those questions of the Christian or the monotheist view, has to be understood in the whole anthropological process of the world. And I give an example. I believe the moment of before Moses, before the distinction, Janasman distinction, but already with this idea of one God, but not the distinction, not forbid to have other worships. At this moment, why the humanity went from this moment when there were so many gods and the moment of one God? I think in our tradition, it can be understood through anthropologically, through the passage the humanity had to live, had to face from the nomadic condition to the sedentary condition, with a rule which is an ecological rule of living leaving the necessity of sacrificing, of limiting the population by sacrificing someone, as Abraham was ready to do with his son, to pass to the other, the other condition, sedentary condition, when God promised to Abraham descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky, which couldn't be understood by nomad. Abraham was shocked by that, but he obeyed to God, and he was delivered by God, and he didn't sacrifice his son. This is a big change. This was a new alliance. This was an alliance, and this alliance is corresponding to this presence of the God, of the unique God. Now I think we are facing a new alliance, and with globalization, and with a return to the drastically, I should say, this expansion of humanity is closed. It corresponds to the globalization, but it has to be stopped in a way. And so we have to find a new alliance. This new alliance is depending on political models and prophetical models. And I believe that to return to the Mosaic distinction, to monotheism, this is a phase, an era in the humanity which is coming to the end, and we are entering in a new one. And here, I believe, it's most interesting to consider both Tianxia, Chinese model. So far as I understood you, Wang Mingming too, in relation, and so far as my very, very limited knowledge of Chinese culture, it's related to the heaven. This model is depending on the heaven. So I should say that the challenge now is to that those two models, the model of God, be enlightened by the model of heaven.
That's so good. On that note, may I use the prerogative of the moderator of, we're going to enter into the next session. Would that be okay? So we have Professor Wang to critique you two.
We are expecting Wang Ming's criticism, insightful or ironical?
Ironical.
Let me first say that it's such a delight to see Professor Le Pichon coming to our campus and to see your well-being. You look as well as before, and also a great many congratulations on finishing your 5 letters in response to our great friend Mr. Zhao Tingyang, who is to me a bit too insistent on his Confucian belief, without knowing that the biggest religion in the world today is atheism, it's not monotheism, according to Marshall Eliade. 我用中文先就写下。我是这个福建人啊。这个我们都知道，如果你翻开他们2个写的那本书，赵天阳在序里面讲到他们2个的困难啊，他们的困难在哪里呢？就是说，一个是讲中文的，一个又是 主要是讲法文的那么一个教授，他们的这本书是用既不是中文也不是法文写的，是用英文写的，今天也是一样啊。对我来说困难更大，因为诸位呢，这个如果我讲英文呢，我是担忧大家以为我在讲闽南话，是吧？所以我早上诚惶诚恐写了这个一篇有点像书评一样的英文稿子，我待会儿就坐在那念给我的2位老兄听，看 if it's okay if I desperately wrote a kind of book review in the morning, and I'll try to read the draft to you to see how you respond. May I sit down? In the fall of 1938, the French ancestor of the modern anthropology, Marcel Mauss, was invited to deliver the Huxley Memorial Lecture in London. And he composed his lecture, the title of which is A Category of the Human Mind, as you know, with materials from all over the world, not just from France or China. Mauss divided the world into 3, about 20 years before Mao Zedong did, right? Mao Zedong also divided the world into 3, which are the tribal or primitive, the ancient, and the modern. The ancient include ancient European, Chinese, Indian, Egyptian civilizations. The lecture was concerned with how the modern concept of the self, the ego, has evolved out of the very, very long history of non-individual perceptions of person. Mauss himself outlined by the end of his lecture the evolutionary process, I quote, from a simple masquerade to the mask, from mask dance to the mask, from a role to a person, to a name, to an individual, from the latter, which he means individual, to a being possessing metaphysical and moral value, by which he referred to Kantian philosophical definition of person. From moral consciousness to a sacred being, from the latter to a fundamental form of thought and action. The course, as he said, is accomplished. Yeah, that's what Mauss is finished. In an age in which evolutionism has long gone out of date. Sorry. We may laugh at Marcel Mauss and take his outline history of mankind as funny, right? It's very funny. It's a kind of 3-stage evolutionism. However, Mauss seems to be correct when he says that the evolution of the notion of independent, inseparable, and integrated person, in quote, has been accomplished. Has been finished, right? And he talks a lot about philosophy and psychology and human science. It's disciplines which have contributed to the modern invention of the idea of individual person. In some sociologists' words, so far the tribal and primitive societies have died out. If not so, they have been thoroughly marginalized or become trivial not significant at all, right? In Europe, historical civilization has been washed, cleaned by 19th century Protestant ethics. Majority of Europe, Kantian metaphysics and modern human science, according to Foucault and a few other philosophers of today. Right? In the broad region of Asia, the old traditions are feeling great difficulties of surviving the evolutionary revolution. Thus, the book, The Shadow of Monotheism, has just been born in this age of evolutionary revolution. It consists of, in total, 10 letters sent between two remarkable friends, Zhao Tingyang and, sorry, I repeat what I said in Chinese just now, and Alain Le Pichon. These two friends were known to me in the later period of 1990s. Yeah, I came to know Alain in 1996 in Derota's University. Antonio Derota, who is a lovely anthropologist, great and lovely, passed away some years ago. And I run into Zhao Tingyang in this famous place, 3联书店, when we had a meeting. Yeah, he looked a bit similar to me when I was a slimmer at the time. I got bigger, and he remained as handsome as before. Yeah. And we have taken part in many, many discussions in the past 20 years. They are not only remarkable individuals, but also remarkable intellectuals. I venture, or I do not venture, to say that they are two of the most remarkable good philosophers and anthropologists of the present bad words, in Zhao Tingyang's words. 坏世界里的好不容易出了2个好人。I said that they are remarkably good because they have both seen through, 看透, the badness of the world and have struggled in a civilized way, intellectually, to make it better, make the world better. Yeah. Obviously, Zhao is creative philosopher who, Zhao Tingyang is a creative philosopher, 是一个有创造性的哲学家，你听得很舒服，对吧？Who somehow speaks like Confucius. He speaks like Confucius, still alive. Yeah? While Alain is an anthropologist who has combined the wisdoms of ancient Greece, Roman Empire, Byzantine civilization, and modern philosophies. Yeah. They are not the same, so they negotiate, just as they did now. Yeah, they negotiate over the issue of which of the pantheism and monotheism. Pantheism. 赵天阳教授在他的书里面自称是个泛神论的啊 ，pantheism or monotheism, but not atheism. Neither of you is atheist, right? He is a pantheist, as he calls himself. You never, only in one page in Alain's letters, you mention your study of African tribes. Yeah, but Zhao Tingyang never speaks about ethnography of the primitive world. Yeah, so a bit like 2 words in most definition of the 3 words, just 2. Yeah? I'm sorry, I lost my lines. Yeah? But not primitive polytheism is a better way of becoming or being in the world. But they are not all that, as they have tried, they're not all that similar, right? As they try to be different. Yeah. You are not similar, you try to be different. You share many factors in each other's minds or hearts. You share factors, right? So you call him your soul brother. Yeah? You encounter some soul brother. And if we allow you, you will keep talking until 10 years later. Yeah? And there's no end of this conference. That's when talking about the future of the world, Zhao Tingyang is in fact more Christian than Alain. He's more 我的意思，我在批评赵天阳说他在谈孔教的时候，其实更像是个基督徒。I was criticizing Zhao Tingyang as being more Catholic than Alain Le Pichon. When he, especially when he talks about this idea of pantheism, I just checked, and pantheism refers to a philosophy invented in the 17th century by an English Protestant believer, who argues that because the God invents everything, so he is in everything. So you are Confucian Protestant follower, Mr. Zhao, I have to say. When mentioning Chinese contributions to the world, Alain, for several times, insists that we must try to understand what will be Chinese contributions to the wisdom of the world. Alain is actually more sincere than Professor Zhao. That's what they say in the letters all reminds me of an alternative understanding of philanthropy. Alternative understanding of philanthropy. As Marcel Mauss, the French anthropologist, long ago defined as a kind of subjectivity of the not subjective. In page 24 of the book, that book you must buy. It's fascinating, remarkable. Everybody should read, right? Page 204 of that book, Alain even calls us to sign a new contract with heaven. For me, this means that for the world to become better, we all must not only become inter-subjective, intercultural, and inter-civilizational, but also inter-objective. We must sign with kind of natural heaven or spiritual heaven to become both inter-subjective and inter-objective. This is, I must thank Alain for the calling. Or what else I can say? Transculture. I'm sorry, I cannot spell this in French. Transculture. Okay, you do it later. Simply means above, in my understanding. In Eurasia, East and West are one of the other. East and West are one of the other, just like Zhao Tingyang is one of the other with Professor Le Pichon. There is no doubt, this is no doubt for me, right? We are one of the other, we are not just pure other, right? However, where is non-erasure, it remains to be covered, I mean, in quote, covered by the philosophers. Yeah. And because this is important, because the non-erasure is also inside erasure. I must thank you. And I have some question I said I have already raised just now. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Wang. So I guess we are entering the Q&A stage, right?刚才我早先都说了，如果愿意拿中文问，没问题的。我们有人帮着翻译，好吗？那我们现在就 open to the floor， 好吗？大家有问题尽管提。
Okay, my major is history, so I have two questions about this topic. First is, as we know, today's people's beliefs was shaped by nationalism, and it's from France. It's from France. It's from the French Revolution, from Napoleon Empire, and so on. So, what do you think of nationalism as a bounder of different culture, and can you have a really universal concept of this concept of this idea can really connect different groups, different ethnic of people, not just a local idea, and other people can't understand what are you talking about. So, and second question is, today we are all rationalized by this progress. So, what kind of idea can you prove to convince intellects or education people to accept your idea as a belief, and they can really believe what you're talking about, and not just anybody or someone to invent some story or some lies, and how can we identify it by the real and good concept or beliefs? So thank you.
Thank you for your two great questions. First, nationalism, you perfectly said it's related to this part of the European and French story where France has a big role, but announced and prepared by the Enlightenments. Enlightenments also meaning the second question, the reason. I think in this nationalism, as a result of Enlightenment, we see that reason is not so efficient. Because obviously, nationalism as a flag of the French Revolution, and considering the results it had in the world, in Europe first, and it has today. You know, Europe as painfully organizing European unity is threatened by modern nationalism in European countries. So the source of it, I think you are perfectly right, is in this history of French Revolution, Napoleon as an actor of the French Revolution, and developing developing nationalism in the whole Europe and in the whole world. It would be very long and difficult to enter in a more detailed trying to answer your questions. And one of the points is that when nationalism joins the and also in the following of the Enlightenment enters in and produces in a way the social revolutions which had been so destructive. And obviously the future world, and here I have to say how the work of Tingyang, Ming also, about Tianxia is extremely meaningful as a model of globalization. But this is one thing, this is what I tried to say previously. This is the challenge we meet and the new alliance we meet. So, but already entering in the second question with this point of rationalism, seeing that rationalism in the political sense has not produced only good effects, but also terrible effects with nationalism and with the political social revolutions. Social problems are there to be solved, but as we know, take the example of the Russian Revolution, the result was a disaster. So, entering in the second point, stories. Of course, I have no way to prove anything about the presence or not of God. The only proof I have is this nostalgia of God, which, and here this is the point I started from with Saravadi, beautiful image. Anyway, I still believe that the model of the global world, this model, as so far as I can understand something of Tianxia, as one model, a great model, this model is clearly, so far as I understand, if I do not misunderstand, is clearly the key point is the alliance with the cosmos and with heaven. Man cannot be, and here I was mentioning Nietzsche, but this was also in this very interesting discourse of Mauss. Man cannot be the reference to itself, to himself. So, as a believer, I understand that you cannot trust my story, but my story is one story to be necessarily faced and confronted with other. I don't know. This is my last word, saying that this story of God, if you say the Western model, with this agreeing that when God disappears, and when through Nietzsche's distinction, God is man, the monotheism is a terrible. It is what exactly you have denounced. But we still need it. We still need the universal. We still need this reference. And I think we are in the process, and we enter in the process of when, say, Tianxia Chinese model, taking account of the heaven, will meet and will enter in confrontation with, in discussion, in agreement in the future with the Western model.
Okay, so more questions? 还有，好。
My major is philosophy, and I also have two questions. And the first one is asking for Mr. Alain. And in your last letters, you said something about prophets and their responsibilities. And you said we should find someone or some country or some states who can deal with the challenge. And but how we can find the best people to deal with the challenge? Because in your letters you said maybe in the family, the youngest child who may have the good education, he can take on the leadership's role about the challenge and deal with the challenge. But how we can consider he the best candidate for people? And the second question is, nowadays, America and China have trade wars, and how we can find the same point about transculture, regardless of the economics factors, because I think that if we should find the same point about the transculture, we may depend on the economic factors. But if our countries have war between each other, how we can find the real point? Thanks.
Thank you so much for your questions. I'm not sure I have perfectly understood. The first point, could you, the first point you are referring to?
And the last letters about the...
Mais la question?
The first paragraph.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, well, I understand that and thank you for your question, because it's central in my demonstration or in my presentation. So your question is, who will be among the sons? Who will be the one who will receive or take the function, the prophetic function? This is your question. Well, I mentioned this ethnic model, ethnic model, but I believe, and I have to say that I consider this ethnic model is extremely interesting and living as a more universal model, and extremely enlightening for me about about this key question of the passage from nomadic situation to sedentary. Now, what I could observe, and what, if I am not wrong, is this situation of the sons. And what is extremely interesting in this is what I really observe, that the first there is a sort of knowledge, which is a common knowledge of the culture of the people, and this, according to this knowledge, they observe who has the quality, who has the even physical qualities to be the one who will be able to communicate, to deal with the outside, because a particular sensibility for that, and so they can observe it. There are signs of that. There are physical signs, for instance, a special emotion, or the eyes, with the liquid of the eyes, some things which are physical, or I should say, not really. But there are also anthropological signs according to the place in the family. This is what you are referring, I think. And the place in the family shows clearly that the second has, better than the others, this sensibility. He is, and it's explained, it's analyzed. It's because the second, in the family, and I think it's universal, has his, the first son, or even the first daughter, is cherished and he or she, but he mainly, is considered that as a follower of the father, and he belongs to the father. He belongs to the father lineage. But the second, he's much freer. He's not obliged to stay with the father, because the father is so interested with the first. He doesn't pay the same attention to the second. Nevertheless, and this can be observed too, both father and mother cherish the second as the new one, the little one. But in this position, he escapes from this world that the father has given already to the first. So he is free, and he can use also the maternal lineage. There are proofs even in the Bible, because I show this example because it's very enlightening for the situation of the Jewish tribes with Abraham. It's the same. And there are historical proofs that it's the same situation. So the second, you can check it in Bible history. You see that he lives with his mother. Not only that, but he has the right, and this is proved and checked either in those tribes or in the Bible. He has the right to be delivered from a strong taboo, which is that a son shouldn't touch or be touched or be mainly dressed with his mother's cloth, which is said about Isaac. Jacques, yes, with the second in the Bible. So he lives with the mother. He lives with the mother, and he has also the power of the father. He has the both, and through that, he's skilled with for coping with very different situations. This is what I call prophetic function. Prophetic function is a function which allows you, which makes you able to deal with the outside. So in this case, the second will be, but of course, this is a theoretical model. and not proved in any case. There are many other factors I couldn't enter in, and this is just a proposal. So this is the first question. The second question, your second question, could you repeat?
Oh, thanks for the Mr. Alain's answer. And my second question is, among today we have the trade war between America, and can we really find the true point or the real point among the trans culture, regardless of the economics factors? I mean, something about the transcultural point is depending on economics. If we had the economics war against other countries, can we really find that point? Thanks.
Thank you. So I'm not an economist at all, so it's I shouldn't be the right person to really answer. Nevertheless, what you said is obviously important and clear. But I should say this, perhaps answer in the same way I answered to the other question about rationality and rights. I think economy is a very dangerous thing to be controlled by I should say the political and the more generally or higher the cultural aspects. Certainly in economy there is a lot of questions which are transcultural questions and who can help to solve some economic trade and relations. But on the contrary, I simply say that first, I'm not an economist, but second, I think the economy has to be controlled. So this is a challenge we're facing. Sorry, I have no good answer. You have an answer.
No, I don't have an answer. But I think the transculture could help each other to know more about the other in depth, so that, for instance, if the CCTV knows more about America, it will not be so stupid to tell the American the trade war is bad to you, not only to me. I think the American will find it so stupid to teach the others.
Okay, I think we may have time for 1 to 2 questions. More questions from the audience?
Well, thank you very much. It's really a great pleasure for sitting here to listen about the both professors to deliver such an excellent dialogue, which enlightened me very much. And I have one question. Just now, as both professors mentioned that the transcultural understanding, as we know that in the Bible we have the story of the Babel Tower. Because of the growing human desires, the God let people speak different languages to raise the difficulties between human understanding and communication. Take this as a metaphor. We also have the difficulties in cultural understanding and communication in modern times, because different language represents different way of thinking, different cultural background. And my question is that in modern times, because of this difference, we have like cultural borders, and we know that pride and prejudice exist everywhere. Some people think their culture is better than other cultures, so sometimes we don't have a really equal situation for different cultures to express themselves. So my question is there any real effective and practical way for different cultures to express themselves? And is there any really effective way to really break the cultural borders in modern times? Thank you very much.
I will try and answer your question, which is, of course, a key question. But I think Zhao Tingyang will answer. But I should say that I'm afraid, you know, I think the best anthropology, French anthropology, is perhaps better than Marcel Mauss, is Jean de La Fontaine. I don't know if you know him. La Fontaine is a storyteller who made the fables, les fables. It's very interesting. He always takes animals to give some example. This is the whole world. You have all cultures like that, but he does it perfectly. And you know, there is a famous piece with the wolf and the sheep, and he concludes in saying, no, he doesn't conclude. He starts in saying, the reason of the strongest is always the best, and I will show you. And of course, the wolf eats the. So this seems to be easy to say, but it's very profound because, and as a fact, you know, when we started Transcultural, before Chinese university and my Chinese friends here took interest in it, we did with Africa, with African scholars. But the African scholars told us it would never be possible because the reason of the strongest is always the best. So, but nevertheless, they try to do. But in fact, it has been proved, even in what we did, that even in institution, even in that was right. So it's difficult to answer. But there are, of course, ways to do, and I think Zhao Tingyang will tell you. One of them, perhaps, is regarding this question of language. Unfortunately, Umberto Eco was a great friend. Is no more there to answer.
Yes, I think you're right. Language decides what we are thinking. As Wittgenstein says, if you want to understand a word, you have to understand a sentence. And you will understand a sentence unless you understand a language. And if you want to understand a language, you have to understand all forms of life of a culture. So I think that it's an impossible task to do it. And I think maybe in the future, AI system will help us. It's a pity, you know, we have a brilliant AI scientist there. He escaped. And Professor Zheng Yi was there. He is making the most advanced AI system. I hope it's an answer for you.
So, no, Zhao Tingyang said the right words, but I should say that we, perhaps without great hopes, we are trying in Transcultural to develop a dictionary of misunderstandings, which is trying to Sorry. Perhaps you heard what I said before? Yes. And, well, it's the idea that there are key concepts which certainly are not the same in different languages, and we can try to, by confronting the two sides, to show some links and to find perhaps something behind. Yeah. So, but what you said is, thank you.
Thank you. I would say just to that point, at least today's dialogue is an attempt to try to have a transcultural dialogue and then mutual understanding, right? So even though you all have to use a third, language, or second language for either. So anyway, I think let's move on to the next stage if it's okay with all of you. So we're gonna show a video clip, right? Or are we? Oh, we don't have something.
No, we're going to give the clips as gifts to those who
Oh.
ask questions. That's our
Oh yeah, right. Okay. So now it's time to present the books to the people, to the few four of you, right? Who raised the questions.
I think it's three.
Three. Okay. Somehow. 王老师也算一个，但不是你要问一下吧，要不王老师问一下，你要问题吗？好吧。
你说用那个 AI 来回答这个问题，但是 AI 可以建立概念吗
No.
现在能做。
太冷了，你这个问题。
好，结束了。
他已经没有回答了。
是不是就是我们现在是结束了吗？
对，结束了。
OK。
那行，那我们现在就结束了，非常感谢大家的参与啊。那个后面咱们有书在卖，对吧？啊，欢迎大家那个踊跃购买，然后正好作者在这儿可以签字，多谢大家。